Scientists have long been making the argument that our human characteristics, who we are, is built into our DNA. But in 2001, Noah revisited the idea of this and discovered that the human genome only has 30,000 genes in it, a little bit more than twice as much as a fruit fly. Not the complexity you would expect in something that every aspect of our human nature is determined by. So this started to lend a lot more credence to the idea that nurture has a lot more impact on who we turn out to be versus nature. Enter Matthew Jensen. He's pictured at the bottom of this screen, and with the family that he was adopted by, he entered foster care at the age of 8 years old. He has the IQ of below 70. He is mildly autistic, and initially they thought he would never be able to operate on his own. It was expected that he would have to go into hospital care for the rest of his life and not be functional at all. When speaking with Matthew about this, it's interesting because he was misdiagnosed originally. He was diagnosed as having multiple personalities because he talked to himself, would abuse himself, hit his head against the wall. And his adoptive family saw this and saw some of these characteristics and questioned the diagnosis. The state had a psychiatrist that spread very, very thin, so he wasn't spending the proper amount of time with him, they felt. After they spent some of their own money to have a psychologist come in and spend more time with Matthew, it was determined that he was autistic. What led to this, and the reason why they thought it was multiple personalities, Matthew's family, his parents were both sexually and physically abusive. His brother had similar symptoms, but his were psychological. They weren't as physical as a scenario as Matthew encountered. But once it was identified, they were able to get Matthew on the proper medication, and Matthew says that made a big difference. It got to the point to where they even were able to start treating him for his issues and after a couple more years had him completely weaned off the medication. He was riding a moped to Subway to work. He spent 2 years making sandwiches. This level of function was never expected based on his IQ level and the fact that he was autistic. However, his family constantly encouraged him and was there for him and had the highest expectations. Matthew is now 28. He is living above the garage of his adoptive family, highly functional. He is now coaching, he's assistant coaching, the football team and tennis team. He does all the announcing for the basketball teams. He is very involved in local schools as far sports teams, everything from junior high to high school. His brother, on the other hand, the one I mentioned that had full use of his faculties but did not receive the same support, is currently in a mental facility, the exact same place they expected Matthew to go. I think this gives a good case study to the difference that nature has versus nurture. Yes, there are things that happen outside of our control, but Matthew handled them in a way that the only way he knew how. He just moved forward. I think his special ability to see the best in himself, and he was fortunate enough to have people around him that also saw the best in him, that put him in a situation to succeed. So that is a special story of Matthew. And when I asked him, in conclusion, when I asked him about his situation and what he thought was the reason why he's been able to be so functional, it's funny, he doesn't even realize that he's functional. He's just who he is. He wants to do better. He practices announcing for games. He has relationships with the high school coaches of the entire county, 7 schools. They call him to ask him statistics on the players because he knows them by heart. He's just doing what he loves. I think that's a lesson for all of us. It's a very special opportunity getting to know Matthew, and I'm very fortunate. He's my foster brother. I love him very much, and he's a big part of my life. So with that, thank you very much, and that was my interview.